Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Long Story Short with me, Andy Cobbs. Now, my guest today is someone that has some fantastic stories and has a really interesting job, a job that really resonated with me when I first met her. And she is a professional organizer. So we're going to be asking her what exactly a professional organizer is. So with great pleasure to welcome Sheena Taylor. Sheena, thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
So let's kick it off. Professional organizer. What is that? What does it mean?
Well, I think it's quite a new term in the UK, but from North America, I'm from Canada, so it's been around for a long time. To simplify, professional organizer is someone that comes into your home and helps you to make decisions of whether to keep things or whether to let them go. And then sometimes we put them in a neater system to make life easier so you can find things in the future or you can tidy your home in a quicker way.
So there can be a little bit of confusion when we think about this because I think some people take it to the extreme. And I remember when the show came out from Josh Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus,
Mm.
Minimalism, and that came out on Netflix in 2016. And those two guys have really done well in sharing their story. It started with a book, and they were doing a book tour, and then it became a really popular series on Netflix, and or I should say a documentary, really. And I think the last time I checked, it had something ridiculous like 80 million views,
Mm.
which is quite outstanding. And then there's of course the Marie Kondo, which
Mm.
has that whole essence of, she's like seen as, what is she? The tidy expert. And she has this beautiful way of looking at things and saying, does this item bring you joy? If not, get rid of it, right? In no
Yeah.
simpler way. And then closer to home in the UK, we have Stacey Solomon's show, Sort Your Life Out. And I think people get, I mean, there's so much content that we can consume, whether we're reading stuff or watching programs, and we can, I mean, just even Stacey Solomon's show, sitting on the couch and watching other people clean their homes.
Mm.
Meanwhile, perhaps you've got stuff all around you that needs attending to. So
Yeah.
any thoughts around that in terms of the inspiration and the motivation that is intended to help
Yeah.
us, but we don't actually do anything with it?
I think it's all I mean, all of those things are motivation in themselves. It can lead us to want to take the first step. In some cases, I think in smaller cases, it might actually motivate people enough to actually take the action and to make the changes. But the reality is it's really, really hard to actually make those decisions about things in your home because there's so many things attached to those things, and they could be your feelings about what the actual item is, or it could be the feelings that are attached to it about letting it go. So doing it and you're saying how to do it and actually doing it are really quite different things. And minimalism is kind of the extreme case, and I think probably yes, they're really popular because a lot of their values and things that they talk about resonate with lots of people. I think the reality is that not a lot of people in today's society are actually going to achieve that minimalist state, or a version of it. They might be able to achieve a version of it that they feel is minimalist for them. Um, and that really comes down to the amount of clutter that people can actually handle themselves, a threshold of clutter.
It's interesting what you say about today's society because I think we have access to so much stuff, and some of the stuff is actually quite affordable, right?
Mm.
So we think, oh, we'll just get that. It's not that expensive. Let's get that, and let's get that, and let's get that. But we won't get rid of anything else. And I think I speak from my own experience, where you think, oh, well, I'll just get that for the kids, or oh, that's nice. I can see I'll use that one day, and
Mm.
slowly but surely the stuff all builds up.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess the question really then is, why do we struggle to let go of things? I mean, I appreciate what you said is that that things will have value in items they have, and they'll tell a story, and there'll be things from the past. But how do we get rid of things? Why? I guess let's go back to that question. Why
Yeah.
do we keep holding on to everything? If we know the stuff's making us unhappy,
Mm.
why are we struggling?
The reason we struggle with things is because it's more than just the thing, isn't it? So, I mean, the most difficult is the sentimental. Those are really hard to get rid of because they're attached to really precious memories. But a lot of the other things, fear is attached to letting things go, and guilt, which are quite negative emotions.
What do you mean? Let me interject. What do you mean
Yep.
by fear? I'm intrigued now.
So it's a fear of letting something go because what if I need it someday? You fear that that won't be there when you need it. So it's almost a comfort thing. Or a fear that you will hurt someone's feelings if you get rid of something they've given you. So there's those things as well. And also, I mean, now there's a fear of, well, if I throw it away, there's an eco-conscious sort of fear. Well, that's a waste. It's going to end up in landfill if I get rid of it. So that's a new one that's added on top of all the other things that we've been dealing with for years and years. And then, yeah,
That really resonates with me because I think, you know, someone that I've loved photography for a long time, and especially when cameras went into digital, I started, buying a digital camera, and then the next upgrade came along, and I thought, okay, no, I'll wait a while. But then I did eventually upgrade, but I never got rid of the previous camera body because I was thinking, well, actually, no, I paid a lot of money for this camera, and I'm not going to let it go for a fraction of what I paid for it.
yeah.
And I think my wife said to me the other day because I don't want to you know come out and say, well, this is very gender stereotype typical, but I think there are many guys that really struggle to get rid of electronics, and we hoard electronics. Oh, well, there's a cable. I might need that cable one day, or
Yeah.
no, not going to get rid of the mobile phones, or that or the other thing. And I've now got this lovely collection of an assortment of cables, mobile phones, small compact digital cameras, film cameras, and my bigger SLR cameras.
Mhm.
And Claire, my wife, said to me the other day, she said, "You've got to do something with all that electrical nonsense, right?"
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, probably. I do agree with you. I totally agree with you. But I'm picking up a camera and then going, well, I just can't throw you out. So it's now
No.
I'm going through the motions of now trying to marry up the cameras with the chargers, putting them together, and then taking them somewhere to say, look, maybe you guys can repurpose and reuse these. But it's taken me a long point to get to that. And I know you and I have had sideline conversations, but for everybody else out there that has all of this electrical nonsense, what advice would you give them?
So I think what you say, I mean, the stereotype around males collecting it, obviously there will be females that have it as well. But when it comes to electrical things, um, there is something you said, it's a collection. So there is almost as though you've collected over time the first one and then the improved one and the improved one. So that will create an attachment. There's the money attachment. There are a lot of money. And what we have to remember is that in the moment when you purchased it, you made the best choice with the information you had at that time, and you spent that money, and that money is gone. And then you've got the product that you've probably used quite a few times. So you've probably used your money from it. The money you spent, you've used that, you've got that back from the item already. And then there's also what we invest in the item because it's a digital product or an electrical product. Quite often, it takes a bit of time and research and learning to figure out how to use it so we can maximize it. And so there's a lot that's been invested in that one small thing, possibly, which then makes it really difficult to let it go. But I feel like we're kind of getting to the point where slowly they're coming up with more options that make it feel better to let these things go. So electricals can be recycled and they break them down and use all of their components to then make something else. And sometimes that feels good for people. Sometimes they can actually still, some people would still use those items. And so you can donate them to be used, and that feels good too. I think we just because it what meant something to us, it's hard to just say that's the end of the life for that thing and that's, and again get rid of it. But if we know it's going to be created into something new, a new product which someone else will then use, it takes away a little bit, I think, of those feelings of guilt of letting it go.
You know, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. I'm sure Claire's going to love hearing that. Now, Sheena, going back, let's go back to how did you actually become, or when did you decide that
Yes.
I want to be helping people organize their lives and get rid of stuff?
It was a bit of a journey. So I actually have a background in teaching, and I was a Senko, so I supported special educational needs the last 6 years of that career. And I was doing a lot of safeguarding and a lot of supporting parents with children with SEN. And I just knew I was going to leave teaching, and two, I wanted to help somehow boost mental well-being in an easy way for people that already had a lot on their plate or that were struggling with just day-to-day tasks. Um, and so when I left teaching, I really researched what I could bring to the table. And organizing just kept coming up a lot for me as one of my top skills. And yeah, and then I found professional organizing and I thought, this is it. This is the way I can help people with their mental well-being in a very profound way by just making decisions about things in their homes.
So just touching on helping people,
Mm.
maybe you can walk us through. So what do you actually do? So people will say, "Hey, come around and have a look at my messy house." And then you give them advice as to what they should and shouldn't be doing, or what they should be getting rid of and what they should be keeping. And then do you have a company that you work with that then um that comes in and moves on instruction by you, or is that for your clients to have to deal with themselves?
It depends. Really depends on the client. But when I go in and work with clients, it's very much it's client led. So I use a lot of teaching and mentoring and coaching through what I do with my clients, and a lot of just listening to the stories about items and whether they're used. You can tell from what the person is saying about it whether they're ready to let it go or not. Um, and it's about having them take the ownership of what they choose to keep in their home. And that in itself really builds confidence around their ability to make other decisions in their lives. Um, and I take donations away from my clients. And then I try and send them to charities or organizations that I know of that would be able to benefit from them, because not all charity shops want everything. So sometimes it's good to have a bank of resources of places that can use the items. And I do have removal companies that I work with that I would recommend to certain clients if that's what they needed as well. So
Okay.
it's quite an encompassing service actually.
Have you ever worked with a client they've found something really of high value in their loft, stuck away?
Yes. Yes, actually. I was working with an older woman and we were trying to get her ready to move house. She was downsizing from a three-bedroom house to a one-bedroom flat. And we found she knew it existed, but she didn't know where it existed. Some of it actually, but we found so much jewelry of quite high value that was hidden in amongst boxes of various other things. So it took months and months and months to get to that point. We uncovered quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Must be quite exciting. And then finding the stories behind that jewelry as
Yes.
well. So,
I feel like no matter who I'm working with, whatever area we're focusing on, it's a bit like a treasure hunt. Because quite often areas will have more than one thing and they'll have a whole mix of things in them. And so you find things that they have been looking for or things they've forgotten about, or yeah, it's just a whole selection of things. It's like a treasure hunt when you're going through the items, and then yeah, it's quite amazing.
now interesting, just going back to your role as a teacher and working
Mm,
with children that needed supported education in their schooling career. But then I'm thinking more about, you talk about how, our lifestyle today and how busy everyone is. But we know that there are people out there that really
yeah.
struggle to actually get organized themselves. And and we end up as parents and we're looking after the kids and our lives are so busy and we're just trying to manage some degree of routine and finding the time to actually then say, okay, I'm going to dedicate 4 hours now to shredding paper is really very difficult to be
Yeah,
focused on that, right?
yeah,
And especially if it is an adult
mm,
that may be neurodiverse,
yeah.
which I know for one, I'll put my hand up and say my wife Claire gets really frustrated with me because I am so easily distracted. And I'll say, right, I'm going to go do this. And next thing I'm outside washing the car. And she'll be, well, what are you doing? I thought you were going to do that. And I said, yes, but I picked up this bottle of car shampoo and then thought, oh, I need to wash the car. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you've got many clients with very similar
Yes, yeah.
situations.
I find so I am quite drawn to, and I think they're also drawn to me, but women with ADHD, quite a lot of my clients are, because that is something that they find quite challenging to actually be organized in systems and processes in their home. Um, but they are capable. They are capable of putting things in place. Sometimes they just need accountability. Sometimes they need someone to keep them on task so they don't get distracted. And actually, working with them is so incredibly rewarding because for them, they're so likely to start something and never finish it. And that really leads to more negative self talk around being a failure. But when they work with me, we get from A to B and they can see that they've done that. And that's that's really good for their self esteem to be able to see that they can achieve that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what do we do in this situation? So I've got a friend who has filled up his garage
Mm,
with inherited things from someone that in the family that died. I think it was a family member that had died, and all of the stuff had come and had been split up amongst the siblings. And he's at his garage is
yeah.
absolutely crammed full, but
Mhm.
his day job is so incredibly busy,
Yeah.
as is his wife's.
Mm,
And he's like, he said, Andy, I don't even know where to start. He
yeah.
said he even applied to be on Stacey Solomon's show, right?
Ah.
I don't think he was successful, but nevertheless,
Oh, that's a shame.
of course, I know following this podcast, I should be going, right, I'm going to get Sheena's contact details and send them his way.
Yeah,
But maybe those are very real situations where somebody dies, and
yeah,
you then take on all their personal stuff to then deal with.
yeah.
But
That's
it can
quite
be a
common.
real, yeah, can be
Yeah,
a real
that's
struggle to get it done.
yeah, and not just that, but I think there's such a almost like a moral responsibility when things have been passed on from a loved one that's no longer there, because they can't make the decisions about that anymore, and it feels hard to make decisions if to let things go if it belonged to somebody else. So that's an extra layer on top of all the other things that we get from clutter. I think for somebody that has that situation, it's good for them to talk through the process because sometimes actually just looking at the entire garage is full of items, you don't know where to start. It feels really overwhelming. And I mean, one of the things that I would work on is actually breaking it down into really small steps of not doing everything all at one time, especially if they're particularly busy in their day-to-day work. So it would be to chip away at it a little bit at a time, but enough so that they could see that progress was happening. And I think it's important as well because I mean I am going to guess on this, but I feel like probably every time he thinks about his garage, he feels mostly negative things about what has to happen there and what he has to do to make it happen. And so we put it off, we delay that decision making because we know it's gonna be really tough. But it doesn't ever go away, and it's even if we're not consciously thinking of it, it's that it's in our mind, "I need to do something with that. I need to do something. I should be doing something with that." And that never goes away until we deal with it. And
Mm.
so it drains our energy all the time, knowing that there's something there that we need to do, and we're not actually taking the steps to do something about it.
Yeah. I think back to when Claire and I decided we were going to sell our family home, and this was a few years ago, or a couple of years ago actually. And but the journey of actually even getting the house to the point that we felt comfortable to put it on the market with or have the photographer around, and that was months and months and months. And what we started, it just has felt like 2 years of constantly having to declutter, because even with us moving house, we were boxing stuff up and saying, no, 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 we're going to keep all this. And now that we've been revisiting those boxes, we're going, what were we thinking, even
Yeah.
boxing this up? And it's just an incredible journey. But the whole thing is starting, right? It's
Mm.
how you actually get started. But one thing that I loved what you said, Sheena, was where you said, don't look at it, don't look at the entire
Mm.
holistic picture, break it up into chunks. And I think one thing that we did, which we found to work quite well, is to actually think about the floor plan of the house,
Mm.
and then say, right, we're gonna color in a room at a time. But it's not a matter of, and I think this is the danger. It's not about emptying a room and then putting it in another room and say, "Yay, job complete!" Right? It's actually getting it out the house, into the
Yeah.
car, and gone. Right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that's the hardest part is actually the not making the decision about it, but actually moving it from your house to wherever it's going to go next. So yeah, that could be quite a barrier too. And it does take quite a lot of time. And yeah, I think you just not imagining it as a great big task is a big one. But also, you're saying, it took such a long time and you're still decluttering. And it's because we can make a decision about something maybe in the initial stages of when we're decluttering. And then as we get better at knowing what we really want, it gets easier. So you might revisit something that you were definitely going to keep and you think of it, a couple of months later and think, well, actually, no, I don't need that now. I can make up my mind about that now. So it's why it's a process, it's a journey. It's kind of never ending.
I think that's exactly what I was going to say as well.
Yeah.
And you've hit the nail on the head. It is never ending, because it is in essence just creating that space that
Mm.
you really, really know
Yeah.
is invaluable.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we learnt as well is, if we look back, and when we first moved into the house, and so we were in the home about 10 years or so. And when we first moved in, we didn't have enough furniture and stuff for the rooms. And over the years, you start to fill the rooms. And if I look back to it now, I'm thinking, goodness me, why didn't we just keep the space? The space is worth so much more
Mm.
than actually putting things in where that space is. That's just my own personal opinion, but it's something that we've really come to appreciate.
I think you forget that. As the space fills up, you forget what it felt like to have space. And people there is that idea of space is good, that's what we're trying to achieve, but actually what does it mean to have space? And that's a completely different thing, isn't it? Really, it's about so if you have space, moving within that room is easier day to day. Going into that room and the state of your brain when you walk in that room will change day to day depending on how much is in that room. And you forget what it feels like when it's really busy all the time. It's only when you start to take things away that you notice there's a difference in how your brain reacts when it goes into that space or how you are able to navigate the room when that stuff is removed.
Amazing. I mean, just what you said there resonates with me as a creative person. I
Mm.
didn't realize that all this clutter that was around me was inhibiting me. It was like, you know, chains were put on me to be creative, because I just walked into a room and went, nah, I can't be bothered, and walked out.
Mm.
And it was like, I'm not happy here. And we'll go for a walk, go for a run, get outside, just escape what needed to be done. But now, having that space, that you could say, that clean, um, spacious environment to
Mm.
work in, it's just been, I mean, chalk and cheese. It would not be fair, really, because the void between the two is just unbelievable.
Yeah. People don't realize that though when they don't have that.
Yeah.
they might recognize that there is a disconnect from where they want to be and where they are, but they're not sure how to get from A to B, or what is impeding them from getting it from A to
Yeah.
B.
Yeah. Now, you must have some amazing stories,
Mm.
big wins. Are there any that really stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I've had clients just achieve and have amazing things come into their life. But I'll tell you about one of my clients that I recently worked with because I just love her story. She's an older lady that had bought a place about 13 years ago, had always imagined it was only temporary, thought she'd move to the seaside, had wanted to do some traveling. And 13 years later, when we came across each other and I went to help her, she was still there. And when I met her, you could just tell right from the very beginning, she wasn't confident in herself in making the decision. That's why she was still in the house and not at the seaside. She could never be 100% confident in what she was going to make a decision about. And so we had a few sessions together and we really dug deep into what she was keeping, why she was keeping it, um, and just generally talking about how she used her space and what she imagined she wanted to do with her space or in her life. Um, and by the third session, she greeted me at the door and she was so excited to share something with me. She'd always dreamed of going to India and had just never taken any action to do that. And she'd run into a friend who was going to India and she'd agreed to go with her. And it was just the decision making that we were making on items in her home gave her the confidence to make a much bigger decision, like a dream come true kind of decision. And yeah, I mean, she was sending me photos when she was in India, like, look, here I am, and it's happened. Um, and yeah, it's wonderful to see that we were able to achieve that for her.
Oh my goodness. Is she still in India then? Or is she
She's
back?
back now, she's back
Okay.
now. Yeah, she's back now. So, I'm just wondering if I'm gonna get a message, in a few months saying, "I'm moving to the seaside."
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to go back to something that I find is, well, I should say was something that was a real hindrance for us, a nice hindrance, and that
Mm,
was having kids.
mm,
And we had a family, and you talk about things being sentimental, but there are so many of those precious memories we have when our children are little. Then we held on to things. I held on to some of the sports equipment and some of the toys that the kids played with, and Claire held on to the clothes, and then the stuff grew and grew and grew because you just struggled to get, and many things we did part company, but there were those special things. But
mm,
even when we did move house, and we were fortunate to have a really lovely loft that was
mm,
fully boarded, and we had a fully boarded loft, which meant it's okay, we can store all this stuff, which I think was half the problem. Talk about, we put it off for a rainy day,
mm,
but literally going through all that stuff, we did keep the things that we absolutely felt were critical, but we found a lot of, I enjoyed the whole aspect of giving things away.
mm.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things about living in the UK is you
Yeah.
can you can donate, and there are organizations that we're very, very grateful to receiving donations of good quality items, and you can recycle things responsibly.
Mm.
And of course, oh, my Facebook Marketplace, the
Yes.
joys of Facebook Marketplace and FreeCycle and eBay. I think I have got to the point now where I quite happily will say I'm I am just donating now. Now it's a literally, I've just got my relationship with the local charity shop that I'm constantly dropping stuff off, and they've been wonderful. Sometimes they go, sorry, don't want that. I've got a
Yeah.
sledgehammer for you if you'd like to just bash it up now and take it to recycling center. But I think even the guys at the recycling center have got to know me and my little red car pretty well.
Yeah, it's funny you say about the, children's things because that's quite a big one for a lot of people. And I have a bit of a theory around that. And I think, I mean, it is such there's no joy like having your own children, I think, or having children come into your life that you love and you nurture and you see grow up. But when they are very young, it is such a in that relationship, you are so very needed and not judged in any way. You are just given conditional love all the time because the children depend on you and they look up to you and they rely on you. And as they get a little bit older and they develop their personalities and they don't need you as much anymore, that's when things start to be less sentimental. And it's because the attachments change, and that's normal. But as a parent, it's we hang on to the early day attachments because they were just so precious to feel so completely needed and loved in that space, and like you were doing the very best that you could. There's nothing else quite like it, I don't think, and that's why those things, when we look at them and we remember those times, they're so important to us.
Mm. And I think actually just on that point, growing up in South Africa and the house we lived in, my mum and dad, they they still have a fair bit of let's say the family heirlooms or the furniture that was made by family members
Mm.
of times gone by, and it's now in the house, or it was in the house, and I grew up in this home that felt like, I remember friends saying, walking around your house is like an antique shop, right? And there were my mom loves clocks, so there's always ticking clocks, and there is something that resonance is just being able to, trigger those memories for me, I think is so important. So I love dark wooded furniture, right? My
Yeah,
youngest daughter is on the absolute extreme, and she's like, "Get rid of that, get rid of that. What is that? Why are you buying that?" And I appreciate that wood furniture today has
mm,
pretty much no value. It's nobody wants it.
yeah,
Um, but I will say that my daughter, in many ways, was right, because she actually was able to see that we were making rooms dark by having this dark wooded furniture. And when we took it out,
mm,
suddenly there was a lot of light in the room, and we went, "Oh, this is actually really nice."
yeah,
Um, and she's been one as well that, she's wanting to invite her friends round. So every time she's inviting a friend round, the house has to be meticulous, right? And I actually quite like it. So I'm very encouraging. When are you bringing friends around again, right? Because there I'm seeing my daughter hoovering the staircases, and her bedroom is pristine and the kitchen's clean and the floors are mopped. And I'm like, going, I like this. I like this a lot, right? But I think that in itself is part of the joy of getting rid of the clutter, is that you can actually clean your home
yeah,
easier and your
yeah.
house smells nicer.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it takes the fraction of the time to clean a space if you don't have to tidy it first. And quite often we are battling the time it takes to tidy so then we could clean. So it takes twice as long as it should just to, achieve what we want to achieve in a space.
Now, let's go back to reality, because I know that, and I can only really share the experiences that Claire and I went through when we went through this whole journey. And I think the important thing was when I jumped onto the same page as her. So I think the fact that we were able to work together and achieve great things, we're very happy to say, right, this weekend, we are just going to focus on this. And one of us wasn't disappearing or doing something else. We were trying to do it together. And I think that really, really has worked well. It's helped us, but it's not easy for everyone to do that. And I'm sure there must be relationships where one member of the family really wants to do something, and other members of the family say, "Oh no, can't be bothered," or "Don't have time," or "I'm too busy," or "No, I really want that," or "I don't see the issue. What is the problem?" How do you deal with client situations like that, Sheena?
I feel like that happens in almost every household. And I mean, we can only make decisions about the things that are ours. We can't make decisions about things that are other people's because that's their process that they need to work through. Um, I mean, my husband, he likes his stuff. He likes to keep his things. And I try, but not successfully always, but I lead by example, for one, but I also question him in a non-judgmental kind of way around the things he's keeping. So, he had a whole bunch of CDs in the garage that they've been there since we moved here, and that was 10 years ago. And so, and always, oh, well, we'll listen to those someday. And I'm like, well, 10 years it's a lot, that's a big stretch of someday. What are we going to do with them? And, where do you see yourself using them? Do we have something easy in the house where you can listen to CDs? When was the last time that you checked to make sure that you love all of those CDs? So lots of just curiosity. What do they mean to you? What does this, what time does it bring you back to? Sometimes giving people space to just tell their story around it and then time to think about it. Sometimes we'll get to the result that, that they will let some things go or all of them, depending on where they are in their journey. So I feel like with most of us would be very judgmental about what, and almost negative. Why are you hanging on to that? You don't need that. That kind of self, those negative things we'd be saying to people because we want them to get rid of it. Um, but actually stepping back and giving them space to tell the story around it and then to really think about why they're hanging on to it sometimes can make a difference.
And the clients that, those clients that initiate contact with you, is it is it women or is it guys? It is a mix of both?
It's a mix. It is a mix. More women than
Okay.
men, but I do get a mix of both. And I think, I mean, when people come to me, normally it's at the point where they feel completely overwhelmed, and it's just got to the point where they don't know where to start, but they know that they need to start because something has to change. And they've maybe tried things themselves and haven't been able to get the results that they wanted. So they recognize that having somebody help them might get them closer to their goal.
Have you got another story?
Yeah, I can tell you another story. Of
Yeah,
course I
it's story time again.
can. So, another client of mine, she's a lawyer and a mum to three boys. Very busy household, as you can imagine. There's a dog in there somewhere too. And when she came to me, they'd had an extension built, and when she came to me, the house was just not working, and there was constant, it seemed like tension and stress whenever they were trying to get the kids to tidy up things. It was causing lots of arguments. And it was the time as well when when she was partly, well, working from home still, and her home office was actually in the master bedroom. So, which wasn't very big, but that's the space that they had. So when we worked together, um, I went in and I mean, I visited their home quite a few times, and I said to her, You need to trust me here, but I think we need to have a massive shakeup. I don't think the rooms aren't working the way you've got them set up. You're making it almost harder." So we completely changed things around. We moved all the toys into the new extension, so they were all in one place. So when the children were putting things away, there was no question of where it needed to go. There was only one space for it to go in. We'd moved the dining table in across from the breakfast bar, so getting dinner ready at night time was just so much easier because they didn't have to travel all the way around to the extension and back and forth. Um, and because we'd moved all the toys, we actually managed to create a different space for her home office. So it wasn't in the bedroom anymore. It wasn't causing arguments because of the cables that people were tripping over trying to get into bed at nighttime. So she was able to trust me to go through that transformation, and she just said her life felt like a completely different person. And within about 6 months, she actually was offered a promotion in her firm and she accepted it. So, I mean, I was saying before, clearing our clutter has such a huge knock-on effect in so many other areas of our life as well.
Great story.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those people that are really feeling
Mm.
trapped,
Yeah.
they're overwhelmed and they know they need to do something. I think I was going to say to you, can you share any tips or tricks or tips
Mm.
or any good advice, practical advice, what they should do? I'm sure number one would be contact Sheena Taylor at yourprofessionalorganiser.co.uk. But aside from number one,
Yes.
have you got any others, Sheena?
Yeah. I think, yeah, because not everyone will have the time or the money to necessarily get somebody in to help them with things. I think quite often people are embarrassed and there's shame around situations that they've got themselves into. But if you could find that one person, a friend, a family member that isn't necessarily going to force you to do anything, but can just be there for you whilst you're making decisions, that can be really helpful. Just to know that you have someone backing you up can make a big difference. Um, Sometimes it's just about being honest about who you are and how you work. So, a recent client of mine, she really struggles to let go of certain items that are to do with charities. Those pamphlets that come through the door or those envelopes, she morally cannot throw those away. It feels really hard for her. But she keeps that to herself because she's embarrassed by that fact. And actually, I know that if she told someone in her life, because she's such a lovely person, someone in her life that loves her and cares for her would take those things away for her. They would alleviate that burden for her. But because she's hanging on to it because of the shame, um, she's carrying that burden. And if we can open up the conversations and people can just listen and not judge, that can make a really big change as well in anyone's life. And then just tiny steps, one thing at a time.
Thank you very much. I think that is amazing. I think that's here's something about us, isn't it? About our home is meant to be something that looks and feels like what we see on TV. And I think sometimes I often watch these stage settings and these, the environments that, let's say it's a film about a family and you're looking into this room that the family are acting in and you're going, that's not reality, all right? That just is not reality, which is very much like Stacey Solomon's show, Sort Your
Yeah,
Life Out. So for
yeah.
those listeners that don't live in the UK,
Mm.
Sheena, can you just explain what Sort Your Life Out is all about?
So, I mean, I love the program. I love watching it. I love lots of things about it. Is it reality? That's questionable. Basically, what the program is, the team go in, they look at the house, they talk to the family, they pack everything in the home up, take it to a giant warehouse where they sort it out, and then the family have 2 days to get rid of 50% of their items. Um, that would honestly take an enormous team of people to be able to achieve that. And depending on the person you're working with, actually making that many decisions in such a short space of time would be really difficult. That unless you're super good at making decisions, I've I find it hard to believe that they can make that many choices in 2 days. But that is the program. Somehow they achieve that, and certainly the clients I work with, I think there's a lot more time and space around making the decisions than would be within that particular program. And then they do wonderful things. They clean up the house and they build new storage and they organize everything for the family, which is wonderful. And hopefully that works for the family. Um, but again, in reality, I feel like you need to make decisions about your home and where things are stored in your home and how things are stored in your home, because what we want isn't what would work for you necessarily.
Mm,
And so having somebody else set it up for you, hopefully it works for them, but I feel like that's not always the case. It might not always be the case.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sheena, it's been absolutely wonderful having you as a guest on
Yeah.
Long Story Short. And for anybody that wants to connect with you, I know I'm going to share your 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 website URL in the description for this podcast. Is that the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, it is. I'm also on Instagram. It's your underscore professional underscore organizer. And I have quite a big Facebook group where there's lots of support in there. It's Declutter Your Home UK.
And I know you said a lot of people financially, they may see this as being something that they just can't do.
Mm.
But as I understand, you're always open to having a conversation
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
anyone.
Mm, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I mean, a consultation, I offer a free consultation for anyone that's interested, just to see if I can help or if we're going to work well together.
And perhaps you might even be able to just in that initial conversation with new clients to say, well, have you potentially thought about what you might be able to sell, which will
Mm,
cover the costs of the whole transformation journey?
yeah.
Uh,
And I think sometimes it's not just about the selling, it's also about saving money. Because once people can find things in their homes, or they can see how much food they have or X they have, it will save them money in the long run because they won't be overbuying.
yeah. And I think the more important thing for us, the lesson I've learned, is I'm protecting that space, that
Yeah,
empty space. No, I'm not buying anything to fill it.
yeah,
So you end up indirectly not spending money again.
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking you through the journey makes you much more conscious about what you bring into your home.
Well, what a wonderful way to end. Sheena Taylor, it's been an absolute joy to have you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to A Long Story Short with me, Andy Cops. And if you've enjoyed today's show, please leave a comment. And also, please do share this with anyone that you think might be interested in listening to what Sheena had to say today. Thank you very much and wish you well. Bye bye.